I wanted to thank everybody for coming to this special support group today. We have some visitors from out of town, from Austin, Texas. Larry Diamond and his wife and his daughter Piper, who you can't see in the camera. But maybe we'll get her to talk a little bit. But this family are low-carb enthusiasts, and you probably see them all over social media. And they came to visit Colorado for a holiday vacation, whatever you call it. And they're going to tell us a little bit about their journey.
Hi, I'm Larry Diamond, and Colorado's beautiful. My first visit here. We're all enjoying it very much. And I am an enthusiast because my wife and I frequently, when we, it's a quiet evening, we've put our daughter to bed, and we sometimes just look at each other, and we're really, really thankful for having found low-carb, high natural fat, and just food as medicine. Understanding the importance of what you eat to not only physical, but mental, and if you want to be a little flowery, even the soul, so mind, body, and soul. It's been transformative, and occasionally we'll say, what has it changed? And we both kind of mouth the words to each other, everything. So, and one of the things that I'm finding is I'm stronger than I've ever been, and my mental acuity returned, clarity. I'm by far less anxious and just the happiest I've ever been in my entire life. I'm in my 50s now, and it's almost like a second chance. So
how did you get interested? What was your health history?
I grew up, and my mom did her best, but in retrospect, and I've come to a deeper understanding, she never learned how to cook. So we kind of had a multi-generational breakdown. Her grandmother did not have cooking skills, and my grandmother passed away when I was 7, had her leg amputated from type 2 diabetes and complications. She was in her 60s, I'm pretty sure. And my mom had struggles with health issues and other issues, and so she did not know how to cook. And we were on a limited budget. I was on government assistance, so almost every meal was fake food. I remember having TV dinners every night, the Hungry Man TV dinners, and then school lunches, which I'm thankful for. But so that resulted eventually in me getting, for over 20 years as an adult, from about the mid-20s to 47, being morbidly obese. Not just obese, but morbidly obese for a couple decades. Then my uncle got what I kind of intuitively understood was a lifestyle disease, and we had just adopted Piper. We were from foster care, and so I was devastated for him. We had a 2-year-old, and it was Alzheimer's, and it's a very scary thing and tragic thing to have. And I have a science background in a lot of the different sciences, and it just clicked that it was lifestyle. And even though I didn't know the term epigenetics, I just kind of knew that it was under my control, and that food was going to be the way to avoid it. And why I felt so strongly about that, I can't say for certain, but I'm glad I did. And that kind of started the journey.
What led you to low-carb, high-fat versus another program?
That's a great question, because we have very incredibly well-meaning people, and one family friends that are actually vegan cookbook authors, and I so admire the concern for health and environment and how animals are treated. So everyone was telling me to watch forks over knives, And also intuitively that didn't make sense to me from, I have always been fascinated by human history and just ecology and evolution, and cave paintings are hard to ignore. It's like, nothing really makes sense, although they're well-meaning, in terms of health and nutrition from that standpoint. But because I knew my grandmother, and somehow I was thinking that my uncle, even though he was only ever diagnosed pre-diabetic, was kind of thinking of his dementia, Alzheimer's, as kind of driven the same underlying causes. And even though official organizations don't emphasize this, I always heard they can't eradicate that the biggest impacts on blood sugar are starches and carbs. And so I knew I had to reduce carbohydrates, bread and pasta and potato chips. So then that left protein and fat to make up the difference. And so then I researched, why do we think fat's bad? And I quickly came upon Ansel Keys within like 20 minutes. And then I saw that graph of, this is the key study that was used to justify the low-fat advice. And I saw two pictures, one the cherry-picked picture, and one all the data he had, and I'm an ex-high school science teacher. So I immediately knew that it was bogus, and I would have flunked Ansel Keys. He would have gone in the F in my high school science class.
Can I jump in real quick?
Sure.
So, when you say what kind of started the low carb journey is, we had previously, I was 70 pounds overweight when we started this. We had previously tried the eat less, move more, and it was never sustainable for us. And I remember when he started, because he had about a 6-month, 8-month head start on me, and he started this and he was talking about it, and in my head I was like, I'll believe it when I see it. We had multiple exercise equipment up in our room that was never used. We had books, we had tapes on exercise, and I really just didn't believe it was sustainable. But then in about 8 months into it, when he had lost about 40 pounds and had not complained at all, he was a happier, nicer husband. And I was just like, oh my goodness, he might have something here. And like I said, he never complained. He didn't miss anything. He wasn't starving all the time. I used to tell him he was an emotional eater, and he was, no, I'm not. I'm just hungry all the time. But he was right. I thought he was just eating because he was bored, but no, it was the insulin resistance, because his body wasn't using his stored fat. It was just using the carbs he put in, and so once that got used up, it just wanted more carbs. And so I guess because we had tried everything else, I guess, and also then in his scientific background, and he puts a lot of thinking into what he does and how he does it. And when he does something, he does it full force. So I guess that was the short version.
So, did you have any doctors that were involved with this transformation?
No. And in fact, interestingly enough, I looked back at my paperwork, and I was being advised years ago to eat low fat. That was the actual recommendation on the paper. And the one thing I did, and I highly encourage this, so years before I started this, I asked for a sleep test, and it turned out I had sleep apnea, and in my early 40s, and so I thought however long I lived, and full face masks worked best for me. But I encourage everyone before they get metabolically healthy, if there is sleep apnea, for definitely, because maybe that kept me around long enough to discover low carb, high fat. So and unlike many other interventions, and Dr. Gerber can I don't know if he's an expert on this, but it doesn't seem to have the side effects that a pharmaceutical can, because it's simply kind of a physical aid until you lose, in my case, the fat around my neck. I don't know how many, but I now usually have small shirts, and before I had XXL shirts, or bigger, and I couldn't close the neck, so my neck was even too big for the big shirts. So all that fat was creating the sleep apnea, and then the sleep apnea resolved. And I also didn't get a book. There's so many good books. I see Always Hungry here, Keto Clarity, and the first book, Cholesterol Clarity. And there's such a wonderful, the reason I spend so much time on social media is paying it forward. And also my uncle who got dementia, I looked over his records. He was a big supporter of the American Heart Association and American Diabetes Association, probably because he wanted to honor his meal. But I don't think they're giving good advice. So if I can help anyone, it doesn't resolve what happened to him, and we haven't been able to resolve it. But it makes it meaningful in a really tangible way if I can help anyone else. So it's my way of giving back to the people that helped me when I went online, and for me to help other people resolve it for themselves. Because one of the things I found was that I started healing right away. The weight loss will happen when it happens, but probably after 1 week, even though I didn't know it, I was probably so much healthier. Because your body's default is health. The default is health. So you just, which is, thankfully, it's health. So you need to give it. Yeah.
Larry, you said you lost 125 pounds and you lost 70? Is that? Yeah. So I'm just thinking, just with such a significant amount of weight loss, that you're going to have some side effects. And shifts in fluids, electrolytes, cramps. You know, did you guys experience anything adverse?
Oh, adverse from the weight loss?
Or from the transition. Some possibly transient constipation, very transient. The keto flu definitely for the first 2 or 3 days. I didn't read a book, so I didn't know about eating lots of avocados and magnesium supplements. So definitely the first 2 or 3 days. But after a week or 2 weeks, I was feeling so much better, and my appetite was already dropping. That after 2 weeks, I was, interestingly enough, weight loss didn't really happen more than a couple pounds for the first 6 weeks. But because I was in it to be healthier and avoid dementia, that didn't bother me at all. I was like, I'm not hungry. So I think having been morbidly obese for the 2 decades, those first 6 weeks, my body was just gearing up to utilize fat, was probably the insulin resistance was starting to resolve itself. So all these metabolic changes were happening. Occasional little bits of insomnia along the way, but for like a week or two, I don't know why.
I never had it.
But not much.
I had the carb flu as well. It took me a little bit longer for the cravings to go away. And also we did it very slow. We, the amount of knowledge we had was like this much as compared to what we know now. And so first we just started with taking out wheat, and then we learned a little bit more about corn. Oh, okay, let's take out corn. That was a hard one for me because I'm from Texas. Tortilla chips. He's pushing me to write my story, and I want to say going paleo, kicking and screaming, and that's when he said tortilla chips, I went, oh God. But so it took me a little longer to get to the place, probably right around a month, right around 30 days, to where I was noticing I'm not hungry all the time. I don't really care about the bread or the pasta anymore. I had a little bit of carb flu, but nothing else that was adverse.
I'd like to ask about your numbers, and did you monitor along the way, and how long have you been doing this? Have you been on the high fat, low carb?
Just past 3 years, so 3 years and a couple, and I had my annual physicals, and I posted some of that online. I almost feel like there's this Arctic explorer, Stephenson, and no one believed him, so he was almost, not forced, but he agreed to live in a hospital for a year and say, I can just eat meat and I'll be absolutely fine. And me and Nina Teicholz and other people, I post my blood work not to look at my blood work, but so many people have misconceptions about cholesterol and what the numbers mean. And they don't understand that the only animal alive, the only animals without cholesterol are dead animals. Cholesterol is essential, but my all-time high for the records I have when I was morbidly obese, my triglycerides were around 200, my HDL was 20-something, so the ratio was 6.8. My last test, triglycerides were 50, HDL was 54, so my ratio was under 1. My wife's last test, her HDL was in the 70s, I believe, and triglycerides were 47. So our combined triglycerides are 97, and mine alone were 200. So, and I don't have a baseline for high sensitivity CRP because no doctor ever ordered it, but I got one on my own. I asked them to add it, and it was unmeasurable, but they slapped 0.5. So we're actually primal. We eat high quality dairy, and I think that's a pretty good indication it agrees with us, because I have no measurable inflammation. And then my A1C the last 2 years, and I have no record before that, was 5.0 both years. Not sterling, but for a family history of diabetes, Dr. Gerber would probably say 5.0 is pretty good.
What was your A1C when you started?
No doctor ever told me that, so I had to ask for it.
Right.
Do you have siblings that have the same similar situation?
I don't, but interestingly enough, we did a 23andMe genetic analysis, and I put it through Rhonda Patrick, who's a wonderful lady. You should follow her. And I have a bunch of FTO gene variants that say that I have like 2.76 times the chance to be obese and diabetic and so forth and so on. But when you think about it, one of my lineages is Northern European. I simply have the superpower of being able to get obese when more calories and carbs are available. And as long as you know that and you know how to turn that off, then you're in complete control over it. So it's not necessarily that people with these FTO variants at all are, I don't see any a negative impact as long as you know the right inputs to give yourself. They'll never be expressed detrimentally. So epigenetics over genetics.
Did you check your ApoE status?
I haven't yet. I haven't.
So George is our
I would love to.
in-house
I would love
genetic
to.
expert.
Well, you can run through. Are you familiar with Prometheus?
That's another one that uses your 23.
Yeah, for $5 you can run through Prometheus,
Yeah.
and it bounces it through a crowdsourced database.
Excellent. Okay. Excellent.
And there's also a free version which you can download an exe file, and it takes like 20 hours to run. That's what I did on yours.
I'd love to.
Yeah, I'll give you a link when we're done here.
Yeah, and I think Rhonda Patrick that has a little bit of the APO, but ironically it said.
Well, she's a 3/4
Okay.
in herself.
Oh.
I'm not sure I don't think her analysis does that, but
No, I want to. Yeah.
but
I love that
she
stuff.
does. But she's a 3/4.
So does everybody know the ApoE?
No.
So that's a risk factor for heart disease, cholesterol, and diet,
And dementia.
and dementia. Yeah.
Oh.
And
If you have two of them, like my wife does, the risk factor goes up to 10x risk factor. Depending on which paper you read, it's 5 to 10x. It's a big risk factor.
Wow.
I have a single copy, and it's a 3x risk factor for me. So, yeah, it's not a. There's a lot of the genetic stuff. It's hard to really sort,
Right.
but the ApoE thing is a big signal.
And what kind of inputs are recommended for people that may have that?
Well, that's a. There's a group online, that have found out and figured out, and then they're a bright group, and they're trying to figure that out, and it's a matter of discussion. Certainly, minimizing if you have a 4 gene, minimizing your insulin glucose issues is probably that's step number 1. I consult with a doc out in Palm Springs who tests everybody for this, and he's found that on the heart disease side, that E4s will spike their small dense LDLs, which are most likely to oxidize,
Right.
on animal fat, and so I'm keto, but I don't eat plant animal fat for the most part.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll
So-
definitely check that out.
And we have we have mix, we even have low-carb vegetarians, so.
Isn't it great?
Mix. But it,
Yeah.
go ahead, Larry.
No, and on Twitter, there's a few vegetarians that follow me and ask me for advice, so absolutely.
Yeah, I like that you keep bringing up epigenetics, which is, the expression, so
Right.
you could have, and George knows this as well, you could have one of these SNPs that are concerning or at risk, but it may not be a problem if it's not expressed, if you're doing, the right things.
Oh, yeah.
It's associational, it's not causal.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I look at the E4s as in fact, it's an inflammatory. The E4 itself it's inflammatory, and it apparently had an evolutionary benefit in childhood. In areas where there's a lot of infections and stuff, because the inflammatory would nail that. But later in life, inflammation is not such a hot option, and so trying to minimize that. And it also is apparently a genetic that is useful in times of deprivation,
Right.
but doesn't do so well in a society of excess.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. I love that.
so you didn't mention what happened to your bad cholesterol. You mentioned HDL and triglycerides,
Oh, yeah.
so
Well,
maybe there's a,
my LDL, funnily enough, when I started, that measure was 102 LDL, and my last measure it was 100. It went up to 102. Woo.
Wow.
so nothing happened to you, LDL.
Which is
Yeah, basically. And my wife's is like 120, I think. So, and also I feel fantastic. And I think that I was very happy with the low HSCRP, because I think inflammation and listening to your body. And one of the things I realized, the body is so wise. I think that my morbid obesity was the body will triage. So what the body does and why it's so wise is it wants to maximize your health, but it's so wise, it knows what it needs to do to get to the next day or the next week or the next month, and it will prioritize that. So when I was giving it so many refined carbs and so forth and so on, the best the body could do, hoping for me discovering LCHF as it turned out, was to try and keep the blood sugar as stable as it could. And I ironically never had a fasting glucose of like over 101, but that doesn't tell you how much insulin was needed to get it there. So the morbid obesity was the body's wisdom of keeping me around for another year, with the inputs I was giving it at that time. Removing the inputs, it allowed it to just heal and be a completely different weight and strength and just wellness. So that's how I think of it.
And so how do you guys eat now?
Meat and veggies.
And
I mean,
and
how much?
He jokes that we probably eat more vegetables than some vegetarians because we don't eat, we don't have the fillers, the fillers of grain,
Yeah.
and but mostly veggies, and then I don't know. We don't see. Here's the interesting thing: we never measured our food. We never counted calories. So we just replaced things. So when instead of at one point I was taking the Morning Star soy burgers to work. So instead of that, so I just replaced it with leftovers from the night before. And I just cook more. And like having a kid on LCHF, people say, oh, that must be really tough. Well, it's the transition was tough, but once you just cook more at night, you cook more on the weekends, and you do leftovers. And she's great at eating leftovers. She's great at just cut up veggies. We eat high quality cheese, so she'll eat some high quality cheese. She's more carb tolerant than we are, so she's more fruit than we do. So we'll let her have an apple or a banana, but we focus in our family on berries.
Are you guys supplementing magnesium or vitamin D, any special nutrients?
Magnesium and vitamin D, and there's some very good quality. I would vet all your supplemental sources. We also do, we're trying just recently, and I'll have to take some measures. We're experimenting with berberine, but we just started that. And well, you want to be careful with it. I mean, definitely, we're completely, all of us are medicine free. So the only things we have other than food are supplements. And magnesium is so depleted in our soil, I think that's a smart one. We also take a ubiquinol, and I'm not, it's hard to know, but the ubiquinol form, because the people have said after 40 you can't really utilize the CQ10, and I think I noticed that because of coloration, that doesn't happen when I use the ubiquinol, so that may be correct. Well, it seemed like what was ever in the CQ10 was just coming right out. That doesn't happen with the ubiquinol. But mainly vitamin D and magnesium.
She asked what berberine was. It was
Oh.
to increase insulin sensitivity.
It's a few plants like Oregon golden seal. It's usually sourced, but it's from a plant, and it's a real thing. So you need to research it.
It's metformin like.
Yes.
So for your digestion?
It's more for taking it right around the meal time to kind of aid the body's ability to partition everything that might have been ingested well if you're prone to insulin resistance, which again, the ability to get big was evolutionarily advantageous at one point. And so it's not at all a flaw. And in fact, I would argue, I'm amazed that I got to 47 on fake food. I like to think of it that way, how people are unnecessarily diminishing their quality of life, but it just shows you how amazing we are. And so once that innate energy and ability for a whole healthy life, when you take the bad inputs away, then your body just goes, and it can start healing and thriving. But the fact that people on fake food can get as far as they can just shows you how an awesome gift you're given when you're born of this potential for a strong mind and body for forever. Mark Sisson says, live long, drop dead.
Yeah.
And that's actually what happened with Jack LaLanne. I mean, at 96, he was probably stronger than 80%. We were just on the University of Colorado campus, and I feel, stronger than most of the undergrads there. Jack LaLanne probably at 96 was actually stronger than most of the undergrads there. So it's not hypothetical. People would get to their 70s and 80s and every day I feel like a teenager again mentally. And I'm sure that was common. People were strong mentally and physically in their 80s, and so what's common now is not normal. And we have to understand that, and you don't have to live that way.
Exercise and fasting, how do those work in your life?
The exercise is interesting. I'm a big fan of body weight exercises at home. So I did my first ever pull-up a couple years ago, and I didn't even know I could do it. I just saw, Daryl Edwards is wonderful. I saw a pull-up bar or not a pull-up bar, but just a bar at a park, and I was able to actually do a pull-up. holy cow. And now I can do,
I've been
like,
working on that, I can hang.
yeah, that's the
for
first
like
step.
a minute.
Oh,
And
that's
it.
awesome. That's
I
awesome.
count well.
You might want to, well, you need to start, chin-ups are easier, so you want to
Oh,
start with chin-ups first.
oh, really?
And then the pull-up bars, then you can do like a middle one. And then pull-ups are the last stage.
Yeah.
And start the reverse, like start up and then lower yourself. I'm where you're at right now because
And I'm exhausted, I mean.
Oh,
you know,
chin-ups, you want to start with
After a minute of
chin-ups.
just holding my weight, it's
No, that's
unbelievable.
impressive.
Because I used to do monkey bars when I was, this big, I could go across the monkey bars.
I think that's definitely the next chapter for me. When I started my journey, about 7 months after I started, I had to have a hysterectomy. And so, but here's the amazing thing. So I started and I'd lost about, 15 pounds at the point of my surgery. And then I had at the beginning of the summer, and over the summer doing absolutely no exercise, and doing this way of eating, I lost another 20 pounds. So I haven't really
No
regretted that exercise regime. I know it's a very integral part. I know that you can lose muscle mass and still be healthy. I know you can be a healthy person, but as you get older, that's just what happens. And so I do. It is definitely my next part. He's a lot better at it. He's better at what he does, body weight exercises, and there's really no excuse because you can fit him in anywhere.
So it sounds like it was lose weight first and then exercise.
I was doing both. I actually, this was, and I don't know how important it was, but I could never ever run. One of the things that resolved was, in retrospect, I probably had lifelong asthma. And I was very active as a kid, but never robust, which, would happen on fake food. So I probably, and it scares me now how high I was getting my heart rate, but when I got down to about the 270s or so, I started around 290. I started doing this C to 5K program, but I was smart enough. They have this thing where you progress every week. I was like, there's no way it's going to be a 30-day program for me. So I was like, 1 week became like a month. So so it starts off with more walking, but even there, my heart rate. So I did do, I don't know why, I just wanted to do a 5K. So I eventually did 2 5Ks. Had found Mark Sisson at that point, so for a while I was doing sprinting, which I had no problems running physically, but the sprinting, every time I would try and sprint, I would pull something. So you definitely want to be careful with the sprinting. And I've gotten away from that, but so we have the pull-up bar and a kettlebell. And so the way kettlebells work is the momentum magnifies the force, so they're wonderful. And all I really know how to do well with the kettlebell is a kettlebell swing, but it's a complex. So just push-ups, pull-ups, kettlebell swing. And the awesome thing is in about 4 minutes, so that less time than it takes somebody to get out of the car, not to mention drive, and get to their gym room. I rarely do more than 4 minutes a day, and that it can maintain or build muscle well. And then a lot of walking, and I now stand, and people underestimate the importance of standing. You have to work up to this, but I stand my entire workday now. I'm fidgeting a lot and, kind of squatting and so forth, but so really standing, walking, and some body weight exercises are really kind of the center pillars of mine. And I do intermittent fast sometimes. My longest was 3 days. It was on plan, and I wasn't hungry, so I just kept going. But I want to experiment more with longer fasts because food is medicine, but the body is medicine. And so one way to think of it is even the highest quality food, it's still an input. Your body still has to have all hands on deck, even the highest quality food to deal with it. But when you're fasting, your body says, let me just do what I need to do. And apparently the multi-day fast kick you into autophagy, which means that the weakest cells are going to be kind of spring cleaned out. So you end up being stronger. And even, I've only gotten 1 cold in 3 years, and it was awesome. I was like sneezing constantly, and I think it was killing a lot of the dead cells. So in a way we evolved with viruses, and it's possible that the viruses are kind of housekeeping agents, maybe when you're not doing intermittent fasting. I don't know, I have to look into that. But so we do that, and yeah, and so sometimes often I won't have breakfast. Kind of go with the flow. I'm not a, there's no way I could have calorie counted. It's absurd anyway, but that's not my personality.
I do wonder how many calories you eat on average, though, just out of curiosity.
Well, one thing I noticed, this was incredible, and it's kind of explained. So when I got to the 160s, and I've kind of maintained in the high 160, probably not now on 3 days in vacation, but then I'll go back down. It happens. It's no big deal. I started eating a lot more when I hit the 160s, and I couldn't figure it out for a while, and I kind of figured it out before Dr. Ludwig's book. So during the weight loss phase, obviously a lot of my calories were endogenous fat. So that's one of the reasons you're on a high-fat diet when you go low-carb. And yes, I was eating fewer calories. And isn't that amazing? No side effects, like low-carb, high-fat. You don't have to worry about taking this pill that might give you a heart attack. Just naturally lowers your appetite when you're morbidly obese like me because it unlocks your stored fat. So I probably was eating a lot less, but I wasn't counting it. And then when I got to the 160s, I started snacking a little more. My meals increased, and I thought, oh my, what's going to happen? Nothing happened, and then I figured it out retrospectively that it was because my body was telling me to get more calories from my food rather than from my stored fat. So it worked textbook.
And the food calories are from fat.
Now they are. I'd
Yeah.
say probably, I'm probably right around 60 to 80%. I'll have, and I don't go excessive because you're right. I probably have fewer calories even now than I did before. So I don't eat sticks of butter, but I'll have we have one butter for cooking, and then we have a wrapper with my teeth marked on it because I'll just eat Kerrygold butter as a snack once in a while. Not, obviously, I don't think anyone can eat, but literally like a healthy bite, and that's it. If I'm feeling really fancy for my snack, I want to spend a little time, I'll get some cinnamon out, maybe use a knife, cut off a little butter, and sprinkle some cinnamon.
How about avocado?
Oh,
Add it,
that's,
yeah.
we eat it like it's going out of style.
Macadamia nuts, so the high-fat nuts, those are really good. I always, we have these pastured eggs that come in an 18-pack. And how is this? So it takes a couple minutes, well, it takes 30 minutes, to boil and then let them cool. But actual work time, you put some water in a pan, you put eggs in, maybe a little salt, you cover it, and then you have 18 eggs for breakfasts, snacks. Hard-boiled pastured eggs are just wonderful. And we do a lot of slow-cooked meals. So basically, like any meat we've acquired at a farmer's market or at a good quality store online with some veggies we've also acquired. Just put those in, and we sometimes do use store-bought bone broth or just not bone broth, and occasionally store-bought spaghetti sauce, but a good quality organic one that has no added sugar. So because we both work full-time, we are not from scratch family, but we vet the things that aren't from scratch. And slow cookers are wonderful, and you can have leftovers for 2 or 3 days, minimal effort, 5-10 minutes in the morning, and then multiple meals. Instapot, yeah, and we've done bone broth in Instapot, which we need to get back to. That's a pressure cooker, so it's the opposite of a slow cooker.
So how long does bone broth take in your Instapot?
We max it out. I think we 2.5. We try and max it out. So, and we use apple cider vinegar because the vinegar actually gets the stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, 2.5 hours.
How much will that make? I mean, how many bones do you put in that?
As
Can an
many as-
Instapot
Like
hold?
a chicken carcass, and
Sometimes
some,
we mix and match.
yeah, a chicken carcass and some steak bones maybe.
Okay.
But mostly chicken carcass, that's like where we get most of our
Okay.
bones. I prefer the taste of the chicken broth.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, and we sometimes use it, like the bones do 2 rounds.
Oh, yeah, because until they're rubbery, they say you can keep using them, because there's still stuff in there to break down.
You ever eat the bones after you're done?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, or just if chicken bones are soft enough.
Both of them love to
Even beef
gnaw on
bones,
bones.
beef,
And
yeah.
I haven't tried this, but we have 2 dogs which we love, and somebody said that they took chicken bones after bone broth and put them in a food processor and ground them and used them as powder supplements for their dog food. I haven't vetted that yet, but it makes sense to me because in powder form, a dog's not going to choke on it.
Right.
especially in
Sure.
powder form.
Liver? Liver?
Oh, so liver, I actually love, there's a, no, I don't, don't love it this way. Can I plug any products? We use, there's an Austin-based company, they're wonderful, Epic, and they make liver, it's like sea salt, celery powder, beef liver, and just beef, and they're little liver bites, and Piper will eat them. And then Vital Proteins actually makes a liver capsule. So that, I consider that my multivitamin, and it actually has more than a daily serving of B12. But I want to get better on liver. It's something we aspire to, as well as we want to get better on sardines. So if you guys have good sardine recipes, we've heard you can put them in salads and the weird thing about sardines is they're so mild. And I love them when I eat them, but I still have a little psychological problem with them, which makes no sense to me, but I'm trying to work on that. Definitely trying to
Because
work
they're
on
whole
it.
fish, right?
Yeah, but a lot of them will cut off the head and the tail, and I still have I
She'll
don't
eat
know
them
why.
out of the can.
Oh, she loves them.
One of the things, because she was 3 when we started this, and even before we started this journey, we did fish oil for her, and we did it in the liquid form. So she kind of got the taste for fish. I wasn't raised eating a lot of fish, so that's not a taste I really. Sorry, we need a potty trip, but now, so she's had that taste since she was very young, and so now she'll eat sardines out of a can, and she'll eat and eat lox with him in the morning.
Or if we make salmon, she wants all the skin.
Right, yeah.
Sure.
So she fights for the fatty pieces, and she steals skin off our plates. And the other morning we were just up and lazy, and she wanted hearts of palm and salmon. That was her breakfast request. So
That's a great diet.
so we need to go.
Okay, go ahead. We're gonna pause there.